Building a 60-card Pokemon TCG deck from scratch can be pretty intimidating, so I decided to make a guide that can be used for players of all skill levels. One thing to note before we start is that this video is a guide to creating a deck with only one main attacker. And while this is definitely the main style of deck, this is not the perfect advice for a deck with many different options, or it is known as a toolbox or box style deck. And I plan on making videos on how to build box decks in the future, as well as other deck types and deck tips and gameplay tips, so make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss those videos in the future. Anyways, the first step to making a deck is of course choosing the main attacker, and this can be any Pokemon you want. Most of the time you want to play as many copies of your main attacker as you can, so you want to put 4 copies in, but if your main attacker gives up multiple prizes, you can drop this number to 3 or maybe even 2. And if your main attacker is a stage 1 Pokemon, make sure to include 4 copies of the basic Pokemon. And if it's a stage 2, make sure to include 4 copies of the basic Pokemon. It evolves from a copy of the stage 1 and 4 copies of the card Rare Candy, which will allow you to skip the stage 1, although you probably, as I said, still want 1 copy. Next up, you need to make sure that you can actually attack with your main attacker. You need to make sure to include around 12 energies so you can pay your attack cost. And if your attack cost is more than 1 or 2 attachments, you likely want to provide some form of energy acceleration. These are cards that will attach extra energy to your attacker and let you pay for your attack in less turns. These cards can be of any type, and you generally decide based on what type of energy you need and whatever option you prefer, but generally look for supporters and Pokemon with abilities. Sometimes items will also do the trick, but they are generally weaker, so just look for whatever suits your needs best. The next step is to add cards to support your main strategy. You want around 10 cards that let you draw more cards, and these should be a mixture of Pokemon and supporters that just generally synergize with your deck, although are occasionally other cards like items or stadiums, but also make sure to add around 8 item cards to search out your Pokemon and play a few cards to switch out your Pokemon, a few cards to switch out your opponent's Pokemon, and a few cards to let you recover cards from your discard pile. That should round out most of your deck, and while you can add more consistency cards, you can also add what are generally called tech cards. These are cards that cover up your weaknesses, and these could be cards to protect or heal your Pokemon, cards to disrupt your opponent's Pokemon, or alternate attacking options that attack easier than your main attacker, or just do something different than it to cover up certain bad matchups or certain general weaknesses of your deck. Now that you have a 60-card deck, you're ready to go off and play some games. Of course, it's pretty unlikely that you've perfected your deck on the first try, so as you play with your deck, remove any cards that you find yourself not using and add cards you wish that had been there in the games that you lost. And of course, if you find that something is very flawed with the deck, you can take out large chunks of it and replace it with other things that work very differently. But generally, as you play the Pokemon TCG more, you'll get a good idea of what cards are good and bad, and cards you like and don't like, but just mess around and you'll just have a ton of fun with it.